What is happening? Is that what I was supposed to do?
Or you could say, I'm Mike.
Hey, I'm Mike. I think they know that by now.
And I'm Lance. And we are...
Just these guys, you know?
How you doing this morning, Mike?
I am doing just fine.
You ready for the next chapter?
Next chapter. But I tell you what, I got a pretty cool little setup to today. Completely unprovoked. And honestly, I think it's completely unrelated to anything inspired by me or the book. Traveling to Marquette, Kansas. So if you're listening to this, if you live in Kansas, say you live around the Wichita area, and you've never been to Marquette, Kansas, you got to go to Marquette, Kansas.
Is it nice?
It's really cool. It's a small little town where some folks from Dallas, Texas actually moved up here because they had a connection from when they were a child.
1970s?
Like a great-grandparent or grandparent, something like that. And they used to come up and they used to help on the farm.
Sure.
So when they basically they had enough money to do so, they moved to Marquette and they bought half the downtown.
Really?
And they're now buying different houses in town, but they are rejuvenating this little town.
Wow.
It's like you hear about these ideas out there of people going in and moving into a small town and helping to rejuvenate. These folks are legit doing it. And so they have put in, it's really cool. A group of us went and we did a little, it's called a booze cruise, but it's a tour. There's a distillery that they started. Mm-hmm. One little town has a winery. There's a brewery. It was just a great time. There was 10 of us, 5 couples. But before we even got out of town, out of Wichita, we were riding with another couple and very good friends of ours. And we're about 10 miles into the trip. And from the back seat, the young lady, she says, okay, I want us to do an exercise before we get into this weekend, and I just want you to go along with me on this.
Say road trip exercise.
Road trip exercise. And I'm sitting there going, oh, boy.
Yeah.
And from the back, she says this, I want everyone to think about when it comes to this weekend, what do you want?
Whoa.
This is what she said. And I just started giggling.
You hear it.
Because, yeah, absolutely. And immediately, another person in the car, which, by the way, was not me, started saying what they didn't want. I mean, immediately. Now, I've heard you say this 100 times, that people do this. And I've never really caught it this, like, crystal clear. Immediately, what they didn't want. And so it's so true. But I loved the fact that this was her perspective. This was her direction. Let's just think about what we want.
Yes.
And so what I said was, you know what? I want to laugh. And man, I did a lot of laughing. And it was a great trip. It was a really
manifested.
Good trip. Exactly. And that's the exact word that she used, by the way, too. Let's manifest what we want.
Bam.
And so, yeah. Cool. It was good stuff.
And the reason the fundamentals, there's a couple of reasons the name fundamentals is there, is at a fundamental level. When you hear good advice, when you hear self-help programs, when you read the wisdom of Proverbs, at the core of most of this great wisdom will be these 4 elements.
Sure.
And right there, setting out on a weekend, let's think about what we want and manifest it, and that juxtapose, got to see in action the difference when somebody else began to talk about what they don't want.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
it was cool.
That was great.
Yeah, it was really. And the thing is, we do it. It's all around us. I still find myself stumbling all over the fundamentals, but what I'm starting to catch is the catch. I'm starting to catch myself in it, and it really is. It starts to alter everything that you are experiencing. starting with how you think.
Now,
So.
either you're used to me and nothing phases you anymore.
Yeah, we're getting there.
And like, okay, whatever. Or you haven't noticed that I'm rocking a headband today.
Mm-hmm. You are rocking the headband.
And this goes to perspective too, because
Okay.
when I decided to grow the hair out during COVID, I thought, I can't go to a barber shop. Well, let's just see what happens. And so I started growing the hair out,
Yeah.
and I kept on and kept on. And then I thought, well, we'll give it a full shot, see. And I started seeing myself, like the old 80s hair bands.
Mm.
Yeah. I was like, yeah,
So you can control
Bret
the past.
Michaels. There we go. Bret Michaels, Guns N' Roses. Woo!
Right.
Started seeing that, and I started feeling that, and I'm feeling good. And then a couple of weeks ago, you walk in here and say, I look like Einstein. And
Wow.
so, yeah, I do admit, most mornings we do this. We're up early. I don't put a lot of effort into getting ready for you.
Sure.
We're, doing a podcast, so nobody's going to see me. They do see the videos, but, they get what they pay for.
Sure.
So this morning I thought I would rock the Bret Michaels headband, the Guns N' Roses, the hairband look. This is what I see in my mind.
There you go.
I look in the mirror and I go, that's the look.
That's why I do it.
Different perspective. That guy looks like Einstein over there.
Well, I didn't have a Bret Michaels shirt. I only had an Einstein
That's okay.
shirt.
No, it's okay. It's a different perspective.
Yeah.
So today the chapter is Introduction to
Okay.
the Four Fundamentals.
Gotcha.
We've gone through the introduction. We've gone through the other chapters where we're not dancing around, but we're laying the groundwork to help people understand you can actually change how you think. You can literally change your perspective, and that changing that perspective, there's so much power in how we think. So if we can harness that power,
Right.
we can, do amazing things. We can do things we never thought we could do.
You bet.
And, the perfect example to me, because the implication on the other side, nobody wants to touch. But if I can think and make myself sick, could I think and heal myself?
Mm-hmm. Make myself well.
And part of it, I'm not, my organs, suddenly mold into a perfect, but your decision to change your diet, go gluten-free. I've followed your advice. This is the thing to me about wisdom. If somebody tells you something that seems like a good idea and you don't do it,
What's the opposite of wisdom?
I can't say it on the air.
Sure. Yeah. Yep.
You are
Yep.
people are giving you the answer right in front of you all day long. And if you do not at least try.
Yeah. This has been a huge lesson for me in that very thing, in keeping my mind open to what others are inputting or even suggesting, just at least keeping my mind open to the reality that may very well be a better way. That may very well be a solution. That may very well be something that I would want. And so, because very honestly, I have had a lot of really good advice thrown my way, a lot of good knowledge thrown my way, and I've not applied it because I'm stubborn. I'm just stubborn. And also you could call that a fool. I've just been a fool. And this is one of the big ones.
A dog that returns to its vomit.
Yeah.
And, when you said that, what you said about losing, no pain, losing weight, you went gluten-free, 0 pain, lost 12 pounds, probably more now.
Yeah.
I decided to try. I told you the weekend before I'd roofied myself with this massive meal I had at this restaurant. It was so delicious, but I was knocked out for 2 hours afterwards. Well,
Sure.
We, made a full-blown, legitimate go gluten-free starting that day that you had said that. And it took about a week.
Yeah.
and I didn't know what was going on. I woke up one day and realized I wasn't hurting. I thought, well, maybe I just slept well.
Right.
But the next day, and I'm like, wow, I can't believe this. The back does not hurt, which
I'm telling you, and
that's a lifetime right there.
I know it, and I can't exactly 100% say whether it is all because of the gluten, but I woke up at least 3 times last night, and I was so happy to be laying there awake. And here's why: I didn't have to pee.
Yeah.
It has had an effect on that, and I just go right back to sleep.
The inflammation that comes from that
Yeah.
is, impacts our joints or everything. It just, we're inflamed, we're swollen, we're under a lot of physical pressure due to the inflammation.
I know.
And, I've just been amazed these past 2 weeks that I went to, this is how crazy it is. And part of it, an example of us doing things when we don't even know why we're doing them anymore.
Yep.
And that just came out real garbled. Doing things when we don't even know why we're doing them.
Right.
But, a week into no pain, I went to check out some NASCAR on TV because I'm a redneck. And I reached out and put my hand down to the couch to brace myself as I go down. This is what you do when you got back issues.
That's
I
right.
put my hand out and I started to sit down. I move around too much. And as I went to sit down, I groaned, which is what you do when you have back pain. And as I got about halfway down, I stopped. I said, why am I groaning?
What is this all about?
I don't hurt. It was anticipatory groan. It was going to hurt.
Yeah.
Why am I doing this? I don't hurt.
It's like a habit.
So, retraining the mind. This is a habit. Is this something I want? Is this something necessary?
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure I already can sense that people around me are getting a little tired of me talking about being gluten-free. But even over the weekend, I tried to stay away from gluten as much as possible, and talked about it to the point to where I consciously said to myself, okay, you got to stop talking about this because they're not going to want to be around you. You are you're a glutton for gluten-free living.
That's good.
Yeah. And so,
Glutton for gluten-free.
I just can't oversell it enough though.
We're trademarking that.
Yes. Try it. Just try it.
Give it 2 weeks.
There's great products out there. I have not missed.
Well, and
I
this
want
is
to make sure I'm being honest. I have missed just a little. Some of the things that I love, like a good loaf of bread, and I enjoy a nice wheat beer, but I'll way more enjoy what I'm experiencing now, because this is what I want. I want pain-free. I want good sleep. I want to wake up in the morning and stand up out of bed. And I want to feel like, let's get the day started. Yeah. So.
Want. And as he's saying those, notice the smile, the raising of the neck, the lengthening of the spine, the brightness in the eyes. I want it. I want it. I want it. He's manifesting it right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
The power of the mind.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing is we have control over that.
We do. I've had it the whole time. Lived in misery for years. I've golfed 3 times now over the last month. 3 times. Pain-free. Hadn't golfed in pain-free in over 10, maybe 15 years even. So.
Well, and that brings us to the chapter Introduction to the 4 Fundamentals, because when, these are things I've known, I've studied them, I've known them at a level, and at different times would pull them out and use them, and they became a kind of a 1 or 2 classes in the 13-week anger management class that I had put together. But when I was doing the divorce and child custody work, and I was seeing 8 hours a day, just different people, different conflicts, you begin to hear the same thing over and over and over. And what I realized a couple of years in was the issue is never the issue. You solve the issue, and there's another issue. You solve the issue, there's another issue. The issue is not the issue, whether they, took the kid to soccer or not, whether they broke the chimenea pot or not. That's not the issue.
Right.
The issue is how they think about that situation, and that's the pattern I began to hear. The words coming out of their mouth, the way they were thinking, their emotional responses were highly similar. And that's where these 4 fundamentals came out. I began to hear 4 basic things that was driving all of the conflict in these relationships. And as at that time, and we've covered this a number of times on the podcast, but at that time, you and I were beginning to meet, sit down, talk, bring in the anger management class to the church. And as we sat and talked about these things, and as you learned some of the concepts in the class, those conversations began to shift to, if we struggle in having a relationship with a person in our life, if we struggle having a relationship with ourselves, I don't like myself, I'm not happy with who I am, I wish I don't want to get me, If we can't relate to others, if we can't relate to ourselves at a deeper level, how in the world are we ever going to relate to Jesus?
Yeah.
It's a relationship.
Yep.
Which is what you're fond of saying in church.
Absolutely. And it will be a roadblock to your growth in your relationship with God if you struggle with being able to relate to others, being able to even, the whole idea, kind of the bottom line that Jesus gave us is to love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and then love others or love your neighbor as yourself. Well, if you can't figure out how to love yourself, it's going to be a real challenge, because you're constantly distracted by that battle that's going on. And so I think it's the enemy's number one way of keeping us from growing in our relationship with God is keeping us in a distracted and disturbed relationship with ourselves. That then absolutely feeds into how our relationships go with others. And so, this is why it's so important.
When we were attending a men's group together a few years ago, I like the word a few, could be 3, could be 7.
Sure, yeah.
Few. We were in the circle, and we all had our books, and Phelps had said turn to something, and I was flipping through, not knowing where it's at, and something caught my eye. And I can't tell you today why, but a scripture caught my eye, and I looked at it, and I started giggling to myself, which, everybody's like, what are you giggling at? A little awkward moment. And they're like, Matthew 15:16, Jesus asked the disciples if they're being stupid.
Yeah, willfully.
And everybody turns, and we all get a chuckle out of it, because he says to the disciples, are you being willfully dull? Are you being willfully stupid? And you leaned over and said, that was written for you and me.
Yep.
And that's so true. We hear all this wisdom, we hear all this knowledge, we hear all these great ideas around us all the time, but we're looking right past it, chasing something that these things would be the answer to.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
We're just missing it.
Yep.
It's almost like he said, we're intentionally being dumb.
We're intentionally eating gluten. It's all connected, isn't it?
How many, I'm not you, but many people, know of gluten-free diets, and they're,
right.
Many people know the ills of smoking.
Yep, exactly.
We know, but, I think true wisdom comes in the application of the knowledge.
100%.
And that is, one, I think is like being open to learning.
Yeah, that's the whole reason I was talking about keeping my mind open.
Well, and that's what was going on in that scripture right before that. Is the Pharisees had, tried to trip Jesus up, catch him in some heresy, and they said, "Your disciples eat without washing their hands." And it would be a beautiful scene for The Chosen. Dallas Jenkins, if you're watching this today, do Matthew 15 for me. But he just spins on them and rattles off how they have twisted the law to fit their own needs.
Sure.
You know, the law says honor thy mother and father, but you say,
Yeah.
and they've crafted a way to do something without honoring their mother and father and call it good. And after just, smacking them down, he turns to the people and the disciples and says to them, what goes into your mouth does not defile you. What comes out of your mouth.
Yep.
And the disciples are like, what are you talking about?
Say what?
It's like, are you being willfully stupid? This was a drop the mic moment here.
Yeah.
The Pharisees got it,
Yeah.
but you guys, and so he had to lay it out in redneck Jesse's guy's terms.
Yeah, exactly.
After that, but that whole concept that we can choose to understand or we can choose to be ignorant.
Yep. Our choice.
And it's a hard truth to hear, and it can offend somebody. Last week, we were kind of poking fun at my direct style, and I said some people aren't ready, and it's not, a judgment. It's not, oh, they're not ready, but there is safety in living in the world that we know, and it is fearful, it is scary to try to see things from a different perspective, to try to step out. It was Adler who said that, we create our own depression, but the idea that we're responsible for how we feel is so overwhelming that we externalize it to other people or situations. And that was, in the 40s.
You bet.
And so, this idea of changing how we think, and then you helping me kind of see how we can apply that to the Bible and to scriptures.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take a quick break here because I thought I set the room for 8:45, not 7:45.
Gotcha.
If you'll excuse me just a second. So, back from commercial break. So the four fundamentals, they're not the only kind of cognitive distortions out there, and it's a different approach than other psychologists have taken. Alfred Adler had the ABCs of rational emotive therapy, in which he would, kind of formulaically, A represents a activating event, a situation, B is a belief, and C is a consequence. And so A is a situation, and we have a consequence in relation to the situation. So you call me a name, activating event. C, I feel mad. But there's that intervening variable, B, and the event does not cause the consequence. It is the B, the belief about the event, that causes the consequences. And so he talked about a number of beliefs that are fairly common. And then he had a D and an E, which was, here's how you change how you think. You dispute the belief and install a new belief, and then you evaluate the new ABC. Just been different ways to kind of package it and categorize it. And I've landed on the four fundamentals because I'm practical. Like the thing I just told you about ABCDE, that's pretty cool. How do you apply it?
Right.
And it's the application then becomes, and that's where a therapist is really needed, is to help you walk through that a number of times in therapy. And they'll literally give you written homework, to do these kinds of things. You come back in and you go over your homework with the therapist. But I repackaged it as the four fundamentals because I knew when I would give this to somebody, I don't know if we have time for this. I'll throw it in. There's three types of therapy, broadly speaking.
Okay.
There's crisis management, keep you alive. And there's short-term therapy, which I work with you until you're kind of good, and then I'm comfortable letting you go because I know you can finish it on your own, perhaps.
Sure. Yep.
And then there's long-term therapy, in which you stay with me until you're completely fixed, whatever that word means. When I heard that, how long is long-term therapy?
That was my question.
3 to 5 years. I haven't had a car for 3 to 5 years, so I'm going to be with you for 3 to 5 years. I don't know about this.
Yeah.
Well, then how long is this short-term stuff? Like 1 to 2 years. I'm like, oh my God. So here's what I ended up kind of doing with it is saying, well, let's go for that short-term stuff. We're trying to help people change. And let's say I'm really good at it and I get it done in 1 year. What did I just do? Well, I met with somebody 50 times. I took a 2-week vacation.
Mm-hmm.
So technically what just happened is there was 50 therapeutic moments inside of a year. Well, what if I could get them to do something therapeutic away from the office?
Sure.
So they're having 2 therapeutic moments every week. Well, that takes it from 50 weeks
Cut her in half.
down to 6 months, from 12 months down to 6 months.
Yep.
Hey,
Yep.
what if I could get them to do something therapeutic 3 times a week? And so what if I can get them to do something therapeutic every day?
Right.
So now we're looking at 50 days to where you don't need, hopefully, potentially, you are in a good enough place where you can continue to go forth and do it on your own.
Yeah.
And so that being the framework I'm targeting to work inside, I overheard a radio interview, television interview with Tom Brady one year.
Mm.
And the interviewer, very astute question, not your cookie cutter kind of questions you ask guys.
Sure.
But he asked him, he said, I see you practicing before the games and there's a little yellow scrap of paper on your clipboard. What is that about? And Tom got all bashful and, oh, shucks. And he said, back in college, when I was a sophomore, so now we're talking 15, 16 years ago,
You bet.
a quarterback coach came to me, watched me throw the ball, and then wrote on this paper, here are the 4 fundamentals to a forward pass. I want you to practice them every single day. And so 15, 18, 20 years later, what does the world's greatest quarterback practice?
The basics.
Make a chicken wing.
Mm-hmm.
This is 25-year veteran. He's out there working on making a chicken wing, grip the laces, come over the top, flick the wrist. He practices that 30 minutes every day.
Mm. Wow.
He practices the 4 fundamentals,
Yep.
which then allows him to do the great. Joe Montana, another interview I heard, they were gushing all of this praise on Joe, and he was pushing it away as fast as they could get it. And he said, guys, come on. The game's actually pretty simple. There's just a few fundamentals.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can get those down, the advanced stuff becomes easy. And it was in that moment it clicked for me that maybe life is the same way.
Yeah.
We spend so much time on the advanced elements of life. And there's books and videos and happy hour. What if we focused our attention on the fundamental elements, and then maybe that advanced stuff will take care of itself?
You bet.
So that was kind of where this all kind of came together, the idea that there's 4 basic underlying thought processes that all other kind of cognitive processes, thinking, emotions, decisions, behaviors, situations in life, circumstances, they're all they're all resting on these 4 fundamentals. And if our fundamental thought processes are out of whack, everything above it's going to be out of whack,
You bet.
to use a very professional psychology term.
Very professional. Yeah. Excuse me. And the reality is that we are constantly thinking. So there's no time during your waking hours that this isn't going to have an impact.
Sure.
So that's what's so great about this, and that's what it's so. And again, it comes from Romans 12:2, to be transformed with the renewing of your mind, changing the way you think, changing your perspective on life in general. That all day, every day, it can change what you are experiencing. I thought about this earlier, that I have spent way too many years just trying to get to Friday. I'm earlier in my life, I spent way too much time doing that, where literally you just want to, okay, that's why Mondays are so unpopular because they're so far away from Friday.
Right.
They're so far away from Saturday. And so we spend our lives wasting time just looking forward to the future instead of enjoying today and controlling how we think about today. And so it affects everything. And the wisdom that we can live in is applying the knowledge that it's been there for a long time. And you have just brought it together in a very easy to consume and apply way. And so that's what I appreciated about it. It has to be simple or I'm not going to apply it. And when it's simple, it has a huge impact.
I think the best things are simple.
Yeah.
When I was learning to play golf, I'm going to play golf. I go study the game. I don't know how to play golf, so why wouldn't I study the game?
Sure.
So I picked up some books, got some videos about how to play golf. And there was, a myriad of advice out there, but this one video that I found, I don't know if you recall a golfer, the Walrus.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He had a video.
Yeah.
How to play golf.
Big old mustache.
Big old belly, big old mustache. He's on the pro tour.
Yep.
Most out of shape guy in the world.
You bet.
But he was excellent at the game. And he had a set of fundamentals. A fundamental to the swing, how you hold your grip, how you stand, shoulders, feet, how you swing. And the great thing about studying him in this video, there are more advanced elements to the game, but this was the exact form he recommended you use for a driver, for a fairway, for an iron, for putting.
Yep.
This is the fundamental golf stance. There are slight variations depending on what you're trying to do, but everything comes back to this exact same physical stance, aiming with your toes, all of that. And he recommended in your video, go to the driving range.
Sure.
And you're practicing the fundamentals of a golf swing.
Yeah, applying it.
And it was very simple, 30-minute video, covered all the bases. And I can't say I'm a great golfer, but I can get out there and show up.
Sure.
But it's only because I know the fundamentals to a golf swing.
That's right. Yep. It's good. It's good stuff.
All right. Well, anything else?
Tonight's a big night.
That's right.
It'll already have happened, but it's going to be awesome.
Well, and if you're for living under a rock and just hearing about it today, Mike is starting a class May 2nd, which is tonight, in which he is going to, do you have any idea how long the class is going to be?
Well, it's set up from 6:30 to 8 o'clock. If it ends a little early, that's fine. I've left room in the margin to be able to hang out and just have some, discussion. Hanging out in the margins.
3 weeks, 12 weeks.
It's actually 21 weeks.
21 weeks.
Yeah. I've got some video teaching that goes along with it. I'm going to introduce the opportunity to apply the book with the podcast, and then that will all kind of flow into your ability to have a fresh perspective on how to even read the Bible. It's all connected. And so I'm very excited. It's at Grace Point in the auditorium.
And if somebody doesn't make it May 2nd, are they SOL?
Nope. They can have attempted, and I think it'll work. I've set this up where if you miss a week or two, you can go back and you can review the online stuff because that's going to be available to anybody. And then you can come right in.
Okay.
We're going to have it set up to where you can come in. And
so even if you're hearing this in week 2 or 3, feel free to just roll on in, call the church if you want, but roll on in, 6:30 Tuesday nights, Grace Point Church.
You got it.
All right.
Looking forward to it.
Okay, well, That's it for today. I am Lance.
And I am Mike.
And we are just these guys,
Have an awesome week.
Catch you next week on the podcast.